Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we have two things for the TLF. Firstly, Simon is going to take us through a summary of the peer observations of 2017-18, which will take probably just over the hour, maybe just an hour. And then we've got a brief activity, which, Iftikhar, do we have that other document loaded up? Is it on Canvas? So you'll be able to show me how to access it, won't you? It's this one. I put it on the module areas of this module of CPD staff. Well, later on after Simon will be up, yeah. Yeah, and that module. So then when Simon's finished, we're going to spend 20 minutes probably most looking at some of the unit ideas we have for the LSBM accredited framework. And before we start that, I'll introduce it briefly. So over to you, Simon.
Okay, thanks very much. So welcome from Durban, South Africa. So wherever you are, so we're working together in the global village. So this is quite an interesting experiment for me because I've never done this before. So we have had a very good year with the peer observation. I've been very impressed with the quality of the feedback that we received from staff. So the purpose of this session is to give feedback to staff on their experiences that we've had this semester, this year. So, but I think one of the key things we need to think about is about reflection. The reflection comes up time and time again. And I think it's important that we need to think about, reflect on our practice, which people are achieving, for their personal growth. So understanding of teaching excellence is a process of growth, development, and flourishing. It's not just an endpoint. So we need to be growing continuously to achieve excellence. So we all care about defining peer observation. It's about working together. But one of the things that has come up is that quite a few people said they would like to observe more than one person. So, so that's quite interesting that they would like to see a couple of different people observing their teaching. But so that's an interesting point. So remember, learning is a process and not a product, and so is teaching. So teaching is lifelong learning, which never ends. You'll never stop growing as a teacher or a lecturer or a tutor. So you need time to reflect, and that came up in some of the feedbacks that they felt that they didn't really have time to reflect. But there are two aspects of reflection that I want to go through. So
Simon,
reflective, yeah.
Can I just interrupt you there? I mean, if people want to do more than one, then it can turn into a mini action research project where they look at one area and do 2 or 3 observations or something. And if they're going to do that, it can go in the workload model. So there's nothing to stop that.
Okay, that'll be good, because what I found is that people were observing people from different faculties. So like someone who's doing IT observing someone in accounting or that. And I found that they said they found the teaching approach was completely different. So
Yeah.
for them, that was quite an interesting learning experience. So there are two aspects of reflection that we need to think about. There's reflection and action, and reflection on action. So you need to be actively involved in these two processes. So the reflection on action is something that takes place in the class as you teach it. And it's thinking about how to self-correcting too when you realize something's not working. So often in the class you might be doing something and something's not working. So what do we do to rectify that problem? So reflection on action. So you need to be doing that on a daily basis. So maybe having a journal, or you just reflect on what happened during that lesson or while you're doing that lesson and what changes you made. And then the second is reflection on action. Happens afterwards. You ask yourself, what went well today and why? What could have been better and how? What do I want to change in my teaching? So peer observation falls into the category of reflection on action. So I want to ask you if you can write on the little right-hand corner here on the little bubble here, the chat. How many of you have a journal that you keep that records your daily teaching, like a little black book or some kind of recording book? I have a little journal book like this, which I record my teaching. So if you can just give a feedback on that, and the little, so I can see the responses coming through. If you can just reply on the right-hand corner of the little chat box whether you have a little reflection. So it seems that we're not really doing that. So that's interesting. Some people like to make a note to themselves. So I'm going to suggest to Nick that in his budget, he budgets a nice leather-bound journal book that everyone will get for their observation, their teaching observation, but also their peer observation. What do you think about that, Nick?
I don't think it's a bad idea, but we wouldn't want it just for a peer observation because that's one off. I mean, I thought the idea that you were proposing is that people come out of class and then just jot down something like should have done that or need to do that. So it's an ongoing thing.
No, it'll be ongoing thing. So there'll be two aspects. So there'll be the reflection on action, which is an ongoing daily or weekly reflection on what they're doing. And then when they do the reflection on action, which is a peer observation. So it's becomes a journey book. So it's not just, so it includes the reflection on action, which is a peer observation, but the reflection on action, which is what's in action, which they'll be doing maybe daily or weekly basis. So that every person will have this journal book that they keep, which may be one day become a biography or something that they could reflect on and write a book or something.
So we're chatting, Simon, and we think it would be better if it was like a joint thing online on Canvas somewhere where you could just type something in rather than everyone doing a separate one. And I mean, I would never do it, to be honest. I'd never. But if I felt that I had an obligation to colleagues, not obligation, but
so quite a few people have written an online portfolio or a blog or something like that. So something in the staff. So there is quite a few ideas that we could do it online. I remember we did have the idea before of our online portfolio that we could keep for staff. So there seems to be quite a positive response to that. But I think it's important to reflect on your teaching on a daily basis and not just when we do the peer observation. So any comments on that?
I think there's already quite a few ideas coming up, and we'd have to just agree it and then try it. I think something online that everyone could share and add to, and if people wanted to do it individually without doing, they could then reflect and then write a comment, once a semester or something. It'd be interesting to see what comments came up.
Well, there's quite a few comments. So people seem to like it, blog or something on Canvas. So maybe the IT. So maybe people could do something on the train, or there might be, like Joe mentioned, after 5 hours of teaching, I want to go home. So maybe a blog or something you put on your phone, a little app that you have on your phone, which could maybe.
Could you post to it? You could post to it from your phone, couldn't you? So when you're on the train home, you could just sort of go,
Yeah.
You'd post and then that's done.
Just opening the door to thinking on your phone, because I think most people spend most of the time on their phones when they're going home, so they could do something.
I do work stuff on my phone.
So as many as a question, what would be the purpose on a daily basis? It's more about what did you do that, the reason for on a daily basis, you might not have to do it every day, but if the lesson didn't go well or something didn't happen as well as you expected, maybe you need to think about changing something, that the way you're doing it.
It wouldn't be daily. It would be when there was something to say. When something, you felt there was something to share.
Okay. So the reflection is to try and improve your individual performance, which is important, but it's also more embracing as well. Okay, so let me just move on to the next idea. So some interesting comments. Some people say that it should be more individual rather than for everyone. So if you had a bad day at the office, you don't want to share that with everyone because you'd be embarrassed. But so you need to think about the way we take that forward. So these are some of the feedbacks that people. So there were quite a few people gave feedback on what they learned from the peer observation. So the first one is a comment from one of the observed. So I think this scheme will have a positive effect on LSBM. Encourages the sharing of great teaching ideas, whether it can be explicit or implicit. So maybe having the blog or something on Canvas that might help to share ideas. The second one, good to observe a marketing seminar. I used to work in marketing. Found the session very helpful and enlightening. Observing an essential part of professional development. To discuss teaching methods. Opportunity to share best practice. So I had about 50 of these different comments. I've just taken 4 of them, but the feedback on the peer observation was very positive. People found the process very useful, and it had an impact on individuals. So I really feel that the way we're going about this is having a positive impact on people's teaching, which is very encouraging by seeing what the feedback from people is. So that is a very positive experience for the staff at LSBM. Any comments about the shared experiences of the peer observation? Anyone want to say anything else on the little chat box? Move on to the next slide. So there are different dimensions.
Simon, can I just say, because for the peer observation, yes, all positive. However, if you've been in the same institution 3-4 years and you have observed pretty much everyone in your department, you tend to repeat the observation and being also doing managed observation. So it is very difficult though to arrange with other departments. So sometimes this exercise becomes a little bit obsolete. I don't know, just a point that I wanted to raise, and I'm muting myself again.
Okay, right, thanks for that. So some of the ways the purposes of peer observation, reflection, challenge professional reasoning, self-awareness, avoid virtual practice, improve quality of practice. So these are some of the dimensions of peer observation. Now, one of the things that people spoke about was that we're in the business of communication. That the quality of our teaching is closely linked to the way we communicate, which I found quite an interesting insight. And one of the things that came up quite frequently was about, do you know the names of your learners? So some people said they carry their register around to learn the names. So how do you communicate with somebody if you don't know the name? Just say who, you. So that's quite an instant in developing a relationship with our students. Do we know the names of the students? So I see as many says we know the names, but is that a general feeling that we all know the names of all our students?
Don't.
So that's quite interesting. So the suggestion that we have the names of the photos, we didn't have under the old system photo and names. Yeah, it's the ones you teach. So you know the people that you teach, their names. So so that's an interesting. I don't know the names. So from the admin point of view, from IT, is there any, Jodine, would it be possible to be able to get photos or something so that people can know the people that they're teaching?
We've been trying to do that. Yeah, I was going to say we've asked for it a few times because we have all their photos. We have to have their photos, obviously, for their student ID card. So there's no reason why we couldn't have them put somewhere. They're all on Oracle, aren't they? So I mean, mind you, that's clunky. It's not much good trying it because you have to go to each person. But there's no reason why we couldn't have an area. Actually, we could talk to Venkat about it with the new dashboard we're doing. There's no reason why we can't have an area where we've got all the photos from by group. It should be possible.
Okay, so maybe with the new student management system. So that was the one point that came up quite frequently, is about interaction with our students, so you know their names.
Can I just check with Chi? So on TDS, attendance manager, it has photos, but do they all have photos? No, it's not. They're not drawn from Oracle, because then they would all be there. Because if TDS has photos from Oracle, then they should all be there. Oh, they do. So you can go into the attendance monitoring, and they're all there, and everyone has access to that.
So there is quite a few requests coming up for if we could have the photos. It's much easier to make the connection and know the name.
But we've got them, Simon. That's what we've just established. They're on our attendance monitoring system.
Okay. So the other aspects of communication was about pitching the content at the correct level and the questioning technique. So you need to think about the way you question students. So that came up. And then using the whiteboard. So the people who observed the teaching with the whiteboard found that for those learners that are not visual, or those learners that are visual rather than acoustic or listeners, they found that the whiteboard helped them a lot. So that was just one of the things that came up quite frequently about those that use a whiteboard seem to engage the students with the learning process. Okay, so those are some of the key things about communication, but I think we all need to think about, as an educator, our main role as a communicator. How effective are we as a communicator with our students? One of the key areas is about, do we know the student's name? So activity 1 is how effective are we in communicating with our students? What is the most effective way of communication? What challenges do I face? Do we know the names of our students? So we've had quite a good feedback on the names, but are we effective in our communication with our students? What is the most effective way of communication? Is it verbal? Is it visual? What is the way are the different challenges, and what challenges do you face? So we have a little feedback sheet for us here. If got deep to writing things on the sheet already, so we just need to clear that. So if we can work in groups, or if there are groups there, if we could just write our feedback on some of those questions on this sheet here. So the first one was about how effective are we in communicating with our students? The most effective way. What challenges do I face? So I give you a few minutes to jot your ideas on the board here. So you can use the type on the side here. There's a type text. There's a type text that you can use on the right-hand side. So let's see what people come up with. So now it's your chance to write on the...
Da, da, da. Oh. 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 This isn't working.
So one of the things is when we get messages or emails from the students, how many days or weeks do we take to get back to them, or do we get back to them within, say, 24 hours? So the question for the activity is how effective are we with communication with students? And the second question is what challenges do we face with communication?
I think this screen would put anyone who suffers from epilepsy into a fit. There's like dots going around and words coming everywhere. And is it just me that has everyone got that? It's just like, it's like...
Maybe you can also put your comments on the little box on the right. But it's interesting to see how people
Now people are typing over each other. The Annas are having a typing battle. Undo is which one? The arrow, the arrow about third up on the control bar on the right. It's the backward arrow above the black square, whatever the black square is. Ah, there, it's gone.
Yes, there's some really interesting comments coming back. So the idea of overload, communication overload. So the most effective way of communicating with students. Some people say we could do better. So I'm wondering what is the main way that students like to be communicated with or by? I think, what about WhatsApp? Has WhatsApp become the main form of communication for students?
Students read text, we know that. It's not to say that it's the best way to communicate, but if you send an email saying your class is cancelled, they turn up. If you send a text, they don't. They tend to check that better.
So there are some comments that we could do better. So, if anyone wants to write on the little chat box how we could do better at it. As many said, how do we mean we could do better? are we happy with that emails are the best way to communicate with students?
Nope.
For more social media, because Geraldine's coming up with more social media. Some people are saying no. So it's quite interesting about the most effective way we communicate with students. It's quite interesting, all the comments that are coming up. So how are we using Canvas quite extensively, or is that still something that's emerging in our communication with students? So Joe says yes. So just put if you're using Canvas to communicate with students, just a yes or no. So it seems like quite a few people are using some people are using groups from the seminar groups, yes to Canvas. Someone put up about we not using Canvas, not really effective with Canvas. Right, so thanks for the feedback on the communication. So I think we need to have some more thought about that on ownership. Joe's saying about privacy ownership. I think we'll move on about that. So the communication at the moment, message boards. There's quite a lot of discussion here on the best way to communicate with students. So thanks for that. So we've got some really interesting feedback here. So if the students aren't going to engage with the message boards, it leaves us with the emails then in class. So we've got a lot of feedback. Right, so thanks for that feedback on communication. So we'll move on to the next slide. Thanks for all of that. Right. So this was the next feedback came through. The observation is about group versus pair activities. Some of the people, some of the staff observed that staff working in groups or students working in groups, the effectiveness of that and their learning. So given the context of our students, that most of them are second language, mix of nationalities, age groups, how should we optimize the learning experience when working in groups and workshops? This is quite a question that we face, given that we have such a diverse group. There's this interesting with this feedback here. The get to that email as a group, but better if it's done in pairs. So a couple of staff came up about working in pairs as opposed to working in groups. And I felt that some did not get involved as they should have because of the size of the group, but also not only the size of the group, but the mix of nationalities and age groups and different languages that hindered their learning. So that's something we need to think about. Should we be working in groups or should we be working in pairs or a combination of different activities? So the feedback here on this particular staff members, learners were given presentations and an opportunity to work in pairs to check each other's answers to enable peer learning with an opportunity of peer support. So that's quite interesting. We've got some during peer observation, dependent activities, but I hadn't really thought much about the idea of peer learning. So we gave some feedback on what we feel a group versus peer activity, which is the next activity we have here. How do we achieve optimum learning of our students working in groups? So what is the feedback on with a group work, working in a small group, what's optimum size as opposed to working in pairs? So the folk that seem to enjoy working in pairs seem to be, for example, in accounting, where they have a lot of mathematical questions to answer and working in pairs to try and work out the answer. So if we can have some feedback on how do we achieve optimum learning of our students working in groups. If you want to use a little PowerPoint slide or you want to put some comments. Okay. Anyone want to come in on that and talk about group work versus pair group? Anna, you mentioned about pairs or teamwork. And how do we cope with the diverse languages, ages, nationalities within our groups? No problem. Anna, do you want to just explain your answer a bit more? I think it was this one here, the diversity one. There's many. Just tell us more about the gold stars. So can you just explain a bit more about the gold stars? I'm not quite clear about whether, oh, it's a gold star. So
Okay. Okay, the gold star is very, very simple. It's nothing. It's just a star. What they do is I divide them in groups. They compete. They the ones that get the most the better presentation or the most correct answers, or depending on the activity, they get the gold star. As we go, they get stars, smaller, then larger, and then it's the gold star. They that gold star represents nothing but the achievement. It has no value whatsoever, but they seem to love it because they compete with each other. They work as a group to find the correct answers or to present, the best presentation. And I don't get a gold star. It's just saying to them, you got a gold star. That's it. But they love it. And I put them in groups, or I ask them to put themselves in groups. In the beginning, I put them when they don't know each other, and then as they form friendships, they decide to go and join a group, and it works very well. That's it.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Joe, if you can just share some of your different techniques to be used. You came up with different techniques. If you just want to pipe in and just give us some hints or some feedback there, please, Joe. Are you there, Joe? So Joe's, I'm not sure if his microphone's working. So we're getting so much feedback on this other chocolates and coffee and cake, and that seems to be quite an incentive. So Joe picks up there that peers are more likely to share ideas or thoughts than working in a group. So that's quite an interesting idea there. Pity Joe can't come in there. Joe, are you receiving us? Are you able to come on your microphone?
Might not have a microphone rigged up, Simon.
Is Joe in the office, or is he at home? Or is
I think he's upstairs in his office. We're in the computer labs downstairs, and I'm not sure if he's got a microphone up there.
That's a pity.
Ismini's in Greece, Simon.
Okay, Smitty's in Greece. Well, he's probably enjoying the beach. He's probably on the beach with a laptop. So Joe's given us some feedback here. Okay, so we've got so much sharing here. It's just amazing how people are. Don't have to have a microphone. It's a pity. So if anyone wants to chip in or say anything as we're going along, please don't be shy to voice your feelings or thinking of the way how we're going forward.
They do, just to interrupt, Simon, I forget who I was talking. Oh, it was in a building that we're having rooms on Russell Square, a new college, because we haven't got enough rooms. And their academic boss, now they don't run degree programs, they run American courses of some kind, but they have participation reward in terms of marks. And we had a student focus group a couple of years ago, and quite a few students like that idea. And that's obviously not something we could do under Northampton's regime. But, if you've got a participation, 10% participation grade at the end of the semester or whatever, or however you work it. But there are places that have participation element to the overall grade of the assessment. And our students have said they'd be interested in that, and places do it.
So Nick sent out an email the other day about formative assessment, that we need to get our students about formative assessment. Maybe something like this type of activity would get all the students on board, and you'd be able to see who's participating. And through this participation formative assessment, we could give the students a mark. So you could get a mark for participating on the online activity from wherever they are, but I'm not sure how that feasible that is.
I think we can issue, but
okay. Right. So I think someone mentioned that I like the idea of giving students attending and participating. Difficult to measure participation, but I feel that the point is that if they actually have made the effort to come online and actually do something and be involved. That is a show that they're interested in what they're doing. It might get students into class, because you're talking about a lot of students are not engaging with, we have a huge group of students who don't get involved. So maybe the first 6 weeks, the first 8 weeks, trying to get students involved, it might help them to actually get involved with groups. Okay, so we get a lot of feedback about whether we should have the feedback or not. But I think as we move to a virtual environment, it'll be interesting to find out from University of Northampton with their flipped classroom and watching the lessons beforehand, whether they have this online engagement. Okay, so that's the working in groups. I'll move on. We've got a lot of feedback here, so that's really interesting. Right, evaluating the effectiveness of our lesson. Now, this is quite an interesting observation. The observed lecturer asked the students at the end of a workshop about the effectiveness of the lesson and how it could be improved upon. So the lecturer actually asked the students before the end of a lesson, a few minutes before the end of a lesson, that how effective was my lesson today? So I'll be interested in how many of you would be engaged in that kind of practice, as opposed to so should we be getting feedback continuously, or just from the student questionnaire at the end of the semester, or whenever we do the feedback that we have? So I'm not quite sure how this ties up with RMRs and all those things, but is there any kind of feeling about our lesson effectiveness? Should we be asking the students continuously, or maybe once a week or so, when we have our lesson or our lecture? So that's an interesting feedback on whether we should be asking from time to time how our lessons are going with the students, or wait for the student feedback. Dr. Deep, so why do you say that some people know? Question is, so we're getting some interesting feedback on the different ways of getting feedback. Okay, so we seem to have picked up about the key takeaway activity. Online polling. So would someone like to share about how they, if feedback should be continuous, what you actually say to the class, or what is your, how do you communicate that so that it doesn't sound too formal? So the takeaway. got a lot of feedback on that. So take away from the lesson. So I'm not suggesting it's a questionnaire, just some informal reflection. So we're not giving them a physical piece of paper to fill in another questionnaire. It's just informal feedback. How did the lessons go today? What did you learn? Did you enjoy what we were doing? Is there something you should have gone over more, much more informal? So, someone pointed out, what do we do with the feedback? Maybe there should be more in our workshops. But we did have that online polling that we would have an app on our phone that we could give instant feedback to the lecturer. So there was an app that we were working on a while back to develop feedback that we could have in the lectures. Anyone say, what do we do with the feedback? How do we use that? So that's where that reflection action in we spoke about earlier, about our daily kind of feedback from our students at our end of our lesson. Move on. Okay, so I come to the last section because almost the hour's almost up. I can't believe it. But anyway, a couple of people felt that timetable is tight, so it's hard to have enough time for reflection for a journal after the observation. More time allocated for this to be useful might encourage teaching and learning. So this applied more to the sessional lecturers who may be teaching back to back, so they might come in and be teaching almost continuously during the day. And they said after they've done the peer observation, they don't really have time to get together and share their observations, or it's a bit rushed. So just about the time, and any ideas about how we could kind of build in, I don't know if we should have it at a certain time of the academic year, or I don't know if there's any feedback about how do we make time for this. I did speak to Nick about that maybe sessioners could be given an hour which they could claim for the time they spent together, maybe out of hours or after class, to go back over the peer observation.
I mean, that's very easy and it makes sense. So an hour for conducting it and an hour for talking about it. That makes sense.
So just about the time, how do you feel about the time given to it and how you could make it more effective? Any ideas on that? Any ideas on the time reflect after and before the observation. What was that? As many, this is what I was talking about, same people. So we need to be observing different people, not the same people. We don't want to be repeating the same people over and over again. We need to be doing different people because you're not going to be learning if you're doing the same people. But because of the timetable. So, Nick, are you there? Is there any way you could sort of, with a timetable, be able to have a time where people could try and share with, because of the constraints of the timetable? Is there any way we could block time in the timetable where people would be able to move around? I don't know if that's possible.
Well, there's classes going on just about all week, 9 to 5. So, and there's, lots and lots and lots of classes going on. So I'm sure there's opportunities for people to observe all sorts of people. There'll be 40 hours of foundation year classes all week. There's business, there's loads of modules going. So I don't see why it's a problem for people to find someone else to observe. If you're doing 16 hours teaching, which some people do, most don't, then you've got 24 hours when you could observe someone else. And I think it's good practice not to observe someone in the same discipline area because you go kind of prejudged about the materials because you've maybe taught them or you know them. Whereas on the comments you put earlier, sometimes people find very different techniques in different subjects.
That'd be really good. So so is it possible that we could get like the whole timetable that people can observe? How can everyone access everyone else's timetable, or could we have one big timetable with everybody and see when they're teaching and see if they can pair up with a different person?
I'm not sure if everyone has access to everyone's timetables, but course leaders certainly do. So course leaders could look at, say, one of their teams' timetables and say, right, the times when other classes are going on when you're not teaching are all day Thursday and all day Friday, or whatever it might be. And then say there's a business module there and a foundation module there and a law module there, whatever it is. So course leaders have got access to all timetables.
Okay, so that's something we need to explore. So as many, I think, I don't think it's going to be of value to be doing the same group over and over again. We need to get variety, and somehow
Definitely.
we need to be able to work on how we do that with the timetable. Right, so I think I've spent my hour on this peer observation. So we've discussed about the practice of peer observation given the time constraints. So with the sessioners, Nick has come up with some ideas we need to take forward with giving them time to do that.
But also, as I said at the beginning, for permanent members of staff, if they want to do, say, 3 or 4 peer observations and turn it into a mini reflective project like action research, they could just, it's on the canvas, they could say, make a proposal, kind of, I want to review this area of my teaching, or I want to review how other people do this area, and then go and watch 4 or 5 people and then do a little reflective journal and then get it in a workload allocation as part of their, a mini research project. So it would just be, 5 hours or whatever, we'd agree. So it's not only for, not only for sessionals that we can accommodate it. So how do you get that into? Yeah. Oh, right. No, I thought you could link from the virtual classroom. I've been looking the whole session trying to link from the virtual classroom. Well, that's, yeah, I was just looking. I thought you'd get a link from. All right, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So I just come up with suggestion about designing the peer observation form. So actually, we got some ideas there about
Schedule a CPD events there.
made some comments there.
It's just gone through all the committees. We've just done it for next year again, both the forms. I mean, we could change it again if we want, but there's quite a lot of input, quite a lot of changes. But we can change it in September again. Yeah, I think so, because it was just any questions. Simon, we're just putting the next document up, but you can carry on with any questions, obviously.
Just some ideas are coming about recording yourself.
How did you get into that?
So Tom, you mentioned that it's a confrontational system. Do you just want to elaborate a bit more on that before we close up, Tom? Are you on the microphone, Tom?
Well, you could do that, Tom.
He's not on. So
you could drop in on a load and just say things you learned.
maybe,
I don't see why not.
Tom's typing something. So let's just go back. So maybe I have to take that up with and Asha and just see what.
But you could reflect on yourself against what you saw and just say that watching that made me realize X about me. The form isn't submitted, the form doesn't go anywhere. It's only the final takeaways. So just adapt the form and just put, this is how I reflected. As long as Simon gets a single comment at the bottom, which I forget what it says. It says something like good practice or something at the bottom. As long as Simon gets something. So as long as Simon gets a comment to use in this session next year that says, I used the form to reflect on myself and the observation, and I discovered this about my teaching and how I need to move forward. That's ultimately the goal of peer observation. So just, I've said before when I've sent the form round, if people don't like it, just ignore it all and go in and reflect and observe and make sure you come away with something that we can discuss. The form is there for people. If they don't have a form, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? Where's the form? We need something. But if you don't want to use it, as long as you...
Okay, so,
yeah, but the thing that counts is the final bit. The final bit. I mean, obviously there's going to be some details, aren't there? Who you observed or whatever. But it's the two bottom things, which are like areas of good practice and areas for development.
That's important.
Yeah, that's
so that we could open it up to people doing a self-reflection based on some of those ideas of the two types of reflection in and reflection on.
Can we get this big screen? Can I get this to fill the screen? Do I do that? Yeah. But then I'm going to lose the comments box, aren't I? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to end off now because I've spent my hour. I don't want to keep everyone the whole afternoon.
Well, we're only going to take 15, 20 minutes with this. So I've made it bigger and the text hasn't got bigger. The screen just got bigger with more space around the side. Yeah, is that? Can everyone see that now? That's. How does it look? The only problem is I can't see comments and things that people are doing. But if someone else can, they can. So this. No, I think people can read that, can't they? Should be okay. You can download the original file. How do I move that up and down? I can't. Is there not a? No, that one. That grabs it, does it? Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Simon. As I say, most useful to to get that summary of the peer obs and have a discussion. So we're just going to spend 20 minutes max, so we finish early. We're starting work over the summer on an LSBM accredited framework, HEA accredited framework, which basically is for new staff who are new to teaching, and we have a couple coming in to do this, because currently the HA requires 2 years experience, is it, Simon? 3. So if they complete the accredited framework, then they can get a fellowship without 3 years experience or something like that. Is that right, Simon? So the framework is divided into 2 sets of units. The first is LSBM units, so things that are core to us. So staff would have to do, non-academic staff would do these units, and academic staff would do new to teaching academic staff would also do these units, and the academic ones which are below that we'll look at in a minute. So all we want is a bit of feedback on if anything's missing, or if any shouldn't be here. So this page here is just all we have at the moment. So these are supposed to be things that all staff working, and this is a rough draft, okay, so we're not really interested in the details of the themes. It's the event on the left, the main event. So all staff, we feel, at LSBM should know about higher education, whether academic or not. Our servant leadership, or if we have a new leadership policy, philosophy that replaces that, whatever that is. Equality, diversity, we feel all staff should be aware of that with us. Kind of who our students are and developing social capital. And then something about where we're positioned in terms of our community, the local community, student guild. These are just ideas. All staff have to do prevent, so we might as well have it there. And then we thought, ensure that all staff have essential digital literacies. Is there anything additional that all new staff should complete? Yes, and that would be for the academic bit later. They'd obviously still have to do, they'd have to do this because there's nothing to do with teaching this. But we still require the fellowship. So if they'd got that PG cert, they'd just do the fellowship through the normal route of writing a reflective account. This is for people who have no experience, but not this page. This is for all new staff to LSBM. Teaching ethos, that would be good, although that would also, Geraldine, that would also be the next page, yeah, come later. So I don't think there's much else there. We can come up with things later. We can't think of much else that we need to have in terms of yeah, we have missed that, haven't we, Anna? Yeah. Well, I think I think a separate unit. Yeah, I think a separate unit on the academic, the strategic framework. So I think it would just be our strategic framework, because that kind of covers all of that. Yeah, definitely. So we need to have that. That's a bit of an omission. Huh? You could run a session on empathy, Anna, because that fits in with things, maybe. The kind of coaching practical, because that also needs to be all staff, because pretty much everyone, with one or two exceptions, deal with students and with other staff. Okay, that's a good couple of ideas. Let's have a look at that. There's quite a lot of teaching ones, so we'll do a bit at a time, although it doesn't want to go up. Oh, do I go to the next page? I see it only works on a page. Okay. So is this going to drag now? So this is now for academic staff that come to LSBM and don't have any teaching experience and have to wait otherwise 2 or 3 years in order to get a fellowship, whereas this would run over a year, a set of various activities, assessments, assignments, observations, CPD sessions like today's, then with quizzes online, that these new staff would have to complete. And if they pass it all to whatever the pass level is, they then get the fellowship, as opposed to having to wait for 3 years. So run through those: how students learn, teaching strategies, curriculum design, benchmark statements, everything that goes in our inclusive curriculum, PDP, assessment design, writing module specs that possibly get subsumed with a curriculum design, but it's probably good to have it separate, giving feedback 1 and 2, assessing learners, academic integrity, a separate one on Turnitin, and learning gain or distance travelled. There's more on the next page, which we have to flick to. I didn't realise. Must be at the top there only. Yeah, just a few. So practical stuff, Canvas. HA writing workshop maybe shouldn't be on there because that's for the other fellowship option. Attending the conference, observations, peer mentoring, teaching buddies, peer support. Is there anything that a new teacher, anything else a new teacher? Conference section could be on reflection. Yep. That could be reflecting on, write a 500-word reflection on what you learned. At Coventry, we had online training that had to be completed within the first months of starting a person. Well, we have Usha. It's the essential prevent, edit, GDPR training is carried out during staff's induction period, but this would be a more kind of comprehensive look at it, because you can't really expect new staff to spend 2 or 3 hours and then write a reflection on stuff or do something. So this would be much more embedded rather than just an introduction to it. So we do have that. I don't know if it's in the first month. It normally happens within the first semester. But this would be looking in more detail and reflecting on it and trying to engage with it. And I don't know. We haven't worked all the details out yet. Is there anything that anybody think is not there? I tell you what we haven't got. Or have we? Have we got kind of something like, that's just what I was going to say, dealing with difficult groups or dealing with complaints, or I think we'd need something on dealing with issues that we have regularly in the classroom. Yeah, I think we'd do something on classroom management, definitely. Yeah. Supervising projects and dissertations. No, that's quite a good idea. It sounds like it's going towards pub time, conflict in the workplace. No, that's I think, is anyone, can we get these comments? Or is anyone? Yeah. I think supervising students is quite a good one. Might go in with a bit of feedback, but actually making sure we talk about supervising students, what's expected and ways of doing it. Especially, big projects. We have an inclusive curriculum. One of the ones above Usha, I think on page 1, is inclusive curriculum. No, it's on this page, is it? Oh yeah, number 4 here, our inclusive curriculum, which we're going to be reviewing over the summer. FHEQ, Kuldeep, would come into curriculum design. That would be the starting point. Peer learning, critical friend. Yeah, would that come in peer obs? Have we got one on obs, haven't we? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I thought you meant learning from your peers as in teachers. So get it. Not sure what Ismini is referring to. I don't understand either of those. Are difficult. I don't know what that means. I think she's made a typo. It must be the wine in Greece. She meant dealing with easy and supportive colleagues. Conflicts. Surely it's conflict, just one. There's never more than one. I think conflict in the workplace, something around that is important, isn't it? Where you go to, what you should do. I'm not quite sure what that unit would be. That might cover handling difficult conversations, conflict in the workplace. Pardon? Communicating clearly. Resilient, building resistance, resilience, working with rubrics and assessing. Does everyone use rubrics though, Kuldeep? Is it? Because the thing is, I suppose we could have some of these that were optional, and then it could be according to discipline. If there was anything that was discipline specific, then if you were on a course where rubrics were required to be used regularly, then you'd have to do that module or that unit. And if you were on a course that didn't use rubrics, then you wouldn't have to do that unit. Anything else? I agree with me of what I'm talking about. So this document, we're going to start work on turning each of these into a kind of unit with a lesson plan and assessment strategy, not assessment strategy, agree how it's going to be assessed, and then start writing brief lesson plans, and then try and PALS. That's a good point. Well, oh, right, yeah. But, yeah, get at least an introduction to it. I don't know if it'd be assess, it'd just be get someone to give them an introduction to it. And yeah. Links to TEF. No thanks, Kuldeep. I mean, that could come into, the higher education. I think it's important, of course, to mention it. So, yeah, introduction to higher education. And anything about research? I think we'd have to have a research unit, yeah. So, well, just what is research? Have you done any? Would you like to do any? And then they could just look at what we do and then come up with a little research project, which they don't have to do. But pardon, sorry, I can't hear you much.
Can hear you.
Yeah, we definitely need a unit on research, definitely. Yeah, and also I think we should have either in that unit, but we should talk about what's scholarship, what's research. We'll probably do it in the research unit. Yeah. Bid writing, abstract writing, where to get funding. I think for new teachers, we'd leave that to research unit division once they've been told a bit about it. Then they can move off and do research. I think we'll just introduce things. Good. There's a few ideas. Anything else? What are we doing? How are we doing for time? We'll round up in a couple of minutes. Values and culture at SPM. We've discussed that one, Coldeep. I think we're going to have, I mean, we must have it and it is missing. So we're going to have a kind of our new strategic framework, our vision of values and everything. So that will be potentially a single unit. I don't know. Yeah, definitely. Good, unless no one has. I think we should have a clear roadmap for how to start and end the course. We will do. This is the these are the units, and then we will. There'll be some of them will be online and they can do them at any time, and some will be face to face, which might have to be completed in semester 1 or completed over the Christmas break if it's some kind of reflection, and then some will be pinned to actual teaching and learning sessions. So they'll be like bit like this TLFs. They might be on virtual classroom or whatever, but they'll all have a time scale for when they have to do them by, when they have to submit, and then probably over the summer they'll have to write some reflective piece on what they've learnt in the year or something, and then they can get a fellowship if this goes through. Because we have got quite a few, well, 1 or 2 new teachers, new staff, new to teaching. We've got lots of new teachers. Right, I sense the late Friday afternoon drying up of ideas. So I think Simon signed off. Simon?
No, I'm still here.
I thought you did your bit and buggered off, I was going to say.
No ways, I'm not a deserter.
So thank you very much, Simon. And everyone, if you've got any ideas or think of any additional things, this is downloadable, I think, from this, Iftikhar said. Oh, it's already on the CPD area staff.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. It was a good learning experience.
Yeah, and it went very well, Simon. Well done. And it considerably better than last year's. Remember when you were a fading, drifting voice at the end of a Skype call?
Yeah, it was a bit of a disaster.
Was a bit of a disaster. This wasn't. And
so well done to Geraldine and the IT team, really getting this up and running.
Iftikhar set everything up, so thank you. Geraldine's taking advantage of virtual classroom. Iftikhar did the real work, the reality work, as opposed to virtual. Dr. K?
Yeah, I think it's a really good. So I like the.
Sorry, Simon. Dr. Knowledge is just talking to me here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will. We're getting this validated through HEA. So we've got to write a whole lot of documents, submit all the lesson plans, show the assessment strategy, convince HEA that we're able to deliver it, and then new teachers or teachers new to teaching, new staff new to teaching, can do all of this, and then we can go, you've got a fellowship. Because we'll be...
That's exactly the route that I got my HEA fellowship. And
yeah. That's exactly what this is. That's exactly what this is. And we'll have to look into PebblePad. I've heard much about it, but never really seen it. And if it's a good tool for this, then we'll have it, because it won't be that many people that will be doing it. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, and have a fine weekend. Signing off. Stop record button.
Everyone.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks,
have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Stop recording.